To begin, we will start with the primary subject, which is what is ethics? And I'll start with this image from the subway in New York City. This is not a picture I took, found it on the web, but it is a real, I think, amateur photograph of, I believe that's Sergey Brin, who is one of the founders of Google. And this is a bit in the past now. Remember when he was experimenting with that market disaster, the Google glasses. This is the first real marketed example of AI enabled eyewear. Now the Facebook model is having, the Meta model is having a little bit more success. But in any case, he was down in the subway wearing these sunglasses or these glasses with the cameras and connected to the internet. And the question I want to ask is if you're in this subway, um, you're looking at him, he's looking at you, and you're sitting next to someone, a friend, let's say, what kinds of conversations could you have? What sorts of things would you just talk about? And it seems to me that some of the things you might talk about, since many of the viewers of these seminars are going to be STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics oriented people, I suppose many people would have sort of a mathematical or a scientific discussion. You might ask, well, looking at those glasses, I wonder what they're made of. I wonder how much they weigh. I wonder how they connect to the internet. I wonder how the camera works, right? Kind of scientific and technical questions that you could very reasonably ask as you look at him and he looks at you. Or if you have a friend who has different interests, you might talk about economic sorts of questions. Like, for example, I wonder how much those cost. Or if you have a business person sitting next to you, then maybe they will say, well, if you discount the price 10%, do you sell more examples of these glasses and enough to increase your profits? And so there are all kinds of economic questions you could ask about these glasses also. And then if you happen to be sitting next to a lawyer, well, that might be a whole different conversation. That might be a conversation about whether or not the glasses are legal because they represent some kind of privacy violation. They might ask whether it's legal for the cameras in the glasses to be turned on or for the internet search to run facial recognition on the faces that are captured by the camera lens. All those are good legal questions. Uh, and then there's a different kind of conversation. So, what I'm trying to say here to begin is you can imagine when you're in this situation, again, just sitting next to a friend, there are these different kinds of conversations you can have. They're almost like different languages. They have their own vocabulary. The scientific discussion talks about mass and volume and connectivity and electricity. The economic conversation talks about incentives and costs and discounts and profits. The legal conversation talks about regulations, laws, um, legislation, what people are allowed, the police, the judges, what people are allowed to do. Now, as against all of those, there is also an ethics conversation. And just like each of those other languages or conversations, so to ethics, it's its own kind of conversation, its own kind of language, with its own sort of vocabulary and its own directions and assumptions and premises. So an ethical conversation might ask, well, certainly you are free, Sergey Brin, to use these glasses any way you like and to shoot your cameras in whatever direction and capture images and so on. But at what point does your doing that interfere with my privacy? At what point are you entering, in some sense, my personal space and taking something from me? Or is there no point? After all, this is a public place. This is the most public place imaginable. The New York City subway. All kinds of people walking in and out and seeing everything and doing everything. Um, Maybe in that kind of place, questions about privacy don't make sense anymore. Maybe it doesn't make as much sense in this language to say, in this place, your freedom is interfering with my privacy. I'm not sure what the answer is to that question, but I am sure that that's a completely different kind of conversation. It's even a different kind of language. And this is the first point I want to make about what ethics is. Ethics, like math or science or law or economics, ethics is a kind of language. It's almost like learning ethics is like learning French or German or English. There again is a set of vocabulary, a set of ideas, a set of premises. When you're talking about ethics, you're talking about freedom, you're talking about privacy. You have expectations and ideas about how those words will be used. So, what it means to become proficient in ethics is to become proficient in this language of human values. The subject of ethics is human values, as opposed to, again, the subject of the sciences, which are volume or velocity, or economics, which is price or incentive, or law, which is regulation or legislation. Here, the subject of the language is human values. So let's sum this up. Um, we have the idea that first, ethics is conceiving reality in terms of human values. So it's a language which is different from physics, from finance, from law, from customs and traditions, from religions, and so on. And then, second, because it is about human values, sometimes people, when they talk about ethics, they talk about ethics as evaluation. That is, it is the activity of giving value to things or deciding what is worth having intrinsically. Um, so, for example, going back to the case of facial recognition in the glasses of Sergey Brin on the subway, um, we, we could ask, does facial recognition technology create more or less personal freedom? Perhaps it creates freedom for him if he's able to recognize who is on the subway with, take pictures of whoever's on the subway with him, send that image to the internet, and then know who is around him. That may create more personal freedom for him. What about social well-being, fairness, privacy? How are those human values affected by the use of these Google glasses in the subway? Answering these questions, or just exploring those questions, is the act of evaluation. Again, with evaluation understood to mean the idea of giving value to things, deciding what has value intrinsically, what is worth having. Perhaps more than anything else, the activity of ethics, what it means to do ethics, is to attribute value to parts of our experience. Again, going back to the man on the subway, perhaps he is invading my privacy by taking pictures of me. But what is privacy worth? Do I really want privacy? Is it important to me? What value does it have at that moment in the New York City subway? So we have the idea of ethics as learning a language. We have the idea of ethics as evaluation or giving value to things. The next question is, well, what kind of values occupy the language of ethics? And here I have a very incomplete list, but these are some of the kinds of things that are commonly considered to have value intrinsically. That is, they're worth having on their own. These would be things like happiness, autonomy, dignity, fairness, equality, fidelity, authenticity, non-maleficence, creativity. There's a long list, of course, of things that we human beings believe are worth having on their own. So part of what it means to do ethics is not just to give value to things, but decide what it is that has value. It's not just comparing your, say, Sergey Brin's freedom to use his glasses against my privacy, is determining in this context what are all the things that are worth having intrinsically. For example, just to go to the top of the list, happiness. For most people, happiness is something that's worth having. Right? When you have happiness, it's good. You don't say, I want happiness so that I can get something else. No, you just say, I want happiness. If that's true, then happiness is of value. It holds intrinsic value, and it is part of the world of ethics. So we can ask very simply here. We can say, like, there's questions about freedom, the freedom of the person using glasses. There's questions about privacy. My privacy sitting across from him and seeing him as he looks at me. And there's questions about happiness. I mean, he's smiling. Is he happy? Did these glasses make him happy? Do they make his life happier? If they do, that's something that's worth having. I think most people, at least, agree that happiness is something they want. And then that brings us to the next point. I want to underline that when I say it's something you want, I don't mean it's that you want it to get something else, but you want it for itself. So if you compare human values with money, no one wants money in and of itself. Money is not an ethical value. You only want money so that you can get something else, right? You want money so you can get a better apartment. You want money so you can buy new shoes. You want money so you can purchase an excellent vacation. You want money so you can just take one day at the beach. I mean, all those things make sense. But you don't want money for itself, right? I mean, you don't just want to hold the money in your hand. You want the money to do something else. Ethics in that way is different from money, right? I mean, ethics is about the values, the things that you want because you want them, not because you want to use them to get to something else. So, going back to the start, ethics is a kind of language that we learn. Um, Ethics is a language about human values. Human values are those things which are have worth in and of themselves, which we want because we want them, not something else. And then the activity of actually doing ethics is frequently called evaluation. That is giving value to things or deciding which things hold more value than others. Going back to the subway, does his freedom have more value than my privacy? Simple ethical question.